And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking all the news going into the Australian Grand Prix weekend. At the time of recording, it's 11 o'clock on Wednesday, the 20th of March. Media Day is tomorrow, but as you can see, we've got plenty of stuff to talk about today, including Mercedes poaching Ferrari staff. Yeah, key member of staff from Ferrari is going to Mercedes. Fairly significant. They've also worked with James Allison before, because as we know, Mr. Allison was previously with, Mercedes. Next up, we've got Piastri talking about a demoralising championship at the moment. And yeah, I think all the fans are with him on that one. More on that. Also, a truce between the RB pair. They're not exactly at each other's throats, but let's be fair, it's not been the most harmonious beginning to the F1 2024 season. Also, the FIA boss, as we know, under investigation for that Las Vegas controversy, trying to get the race stopped allegedly, and also the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix Alonso penalty. Well, it would appear that he's been cleared. And Susie Wolff, yes, if the FIA thought all was okay, she has apparently filed a criminal complaint against the FIA. So let's get into Mercedes poaching Ferrari staff. Two senior staff members, and the key one is its former chief designer Simone Resta, and that's part of a bid to strengthen its Formula One operation. That's from motorsport.com. That's what they have learned. So he's been signed as, the official title being, a strategic development director, and he's going to work directly with technical director James Allison to push forward with car-related projects. Now, also joining, he's not the only one, we've got Enrico Sampo, who is joining as head of performance software applications. Sampo has been Ferrari's driver simulator team leader for a few years now, and he's said to have a lot of experience in an area that's proving critical to F1 car performance ahead of these race weekends, especially now with the budget cap. You can't use the wind tunnel as much, so understanding what you have through simulator work has never been more important. Now, both men have signed for Mercedes. Their contractual terms mean, though, that they will be unable to join until next year, 2025. We don't know when that exactly is going to be, but they come at a time when Mercedes has, let's be fair, had the last half decade been losing more good staff members than taking on in terms of big names. I'm sure there's a lot of clever people there, of course. So they've been shoring up that, and team principal and technical director James Allison both signed long-term contract extensions last winter before that Ferrari move for Lewis Hamilton. Now, while the team also appointed David Nelson as their senior vehicle dynamist as a replacement performance for Mr. Serra. Mr. Serra, as you may or may not know, we reported on it before, is going to be moving to Ferrari. The movement of Resta and Sampo from Ferrari to Mercedes comes at a time when the Maranello squad has set its sights on key recruitments from the German manufacturer. As well as Ferrari capturing Lewis Hamilton, it's also set to secure services of Mercedes driver development director Jerome D'Ambrosio, former F1 driver, I believe, to be head of its young driver development program. And Resta's signing is particularly significant for Mercedes because he's got vast experience in both F1 and with Ferrari. And as we know, Ferrari have had, 2022, Ferrari had a decent car. Now, the Italian is a long-serving Ferrari man, having been recently loaned out to Haas from 2021 till the start of this year. His deal was part of an ongoing arrangement between the Italian manufacturer and its American-owned customer team, with Ferrari wanting to capitalise on stronger technical ties between these two organisations that have worked closely together since Haas first came to Australia. I think their first race in 2016. Rest has previously been with Ferrari's chief designer between 2014 and 2018, where he would have worked with Allison before a short stint as Alfa Romeo as their technical director. So, poaching staff to Piastri being demoralised. Yeah, Piastri reveals on planetf1.com, the story, that there's a reluctance to revel in a demoralising championship dreams. His championship dreams. Now, as we know, most F1 drivers on the grid dream of race wins, world titles, but this guy, Mr. Piastri, accepts that he's still very dependent on the car. Now, joining the Formula One grid last year, he was one of the most impressive rookies we've had since probably Lewis Hamilton. It was an impressive showing, and it was applauded by home fans in the Aussies' first race on home soil since becoming signed as an F1 driver. So, he had a solid showing. But while that Sunday, Piastri capitalised on a chaotic finish to score points as the year progressed, McLaren emerged as Red Bull's closest challenger. But Piastri, Australia and McLaren car were not last year a very good, the fastest, let's say, combination. Although only P4 in the constructors' standings, remember, McLaren were buoyed at the end of last year to have the second fastest car. Norris recorded several runner-up results on Grand Prix Sundays, while Piastri, don't forget, he won that sprint race. He beat Max Verstappen. Now, having closed in on the podium with a P4 at last year's Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, fans are asking, what's next for Australia's big hope? Now, on his side, Piastri is keeping those hopes to himself. He said, "I rarely dream about it," he told Speed Cafe. "In Formula One, this sport is still very dependent on both car and driver." A lot of car, yeah. If you're in the slowest car on the grid, you're not going to win a race or a championship. It's as simple as that. Completely agree with you, Oscar, because when you think about it, even in the best car, when it's not absolutely right, Max Verstappen can't win. Same for Lewis Hamilton. Go back to Singapore. That car, as we know, is the best car. With an off weekend, the car means, the car, in terms of performance, is more than the driver. The driver is that last, not percentage, but that last, on the pie chart, that last 20%, 30%. I don't know exactly what it is, because as we know, there's a massive gap between Verstappen and Perez. But still, even in the hands of Verstappen, he couldn't get that Singapore guys of the Red Bull to win. That's how much depended on the car. So you stick Verstappen in a stake F1 team, no offence, Sauer, he's not winning anything this year unless he's very, very lucky. You stick Bottas in that Red Bull, or even Zhou in the Red Bull this year, there's a very good chance they're going to win. Unfortunately, it's that. But still, it is the teams that do want the best drivers. Once again, look at the difference between Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez last year. However, Perez, I must say, has been really, really impressive this year, hasn't he? And long may it continue. Hopefully, if that Red Bull is dominant in Australia, he gives us a race. But from Red Bull to RB, to Daniel Ricciardo to Yuki Tsunoda. So Ricciardo has made his feelings clear on Yuki Tsunoda's rivalry with that top prize of let's be honest, I think it's now a potential Red Bull seat rather than a guarantee on offer. Ricciardo has sought to play down any tension between him and Tsunoda after that team orders issues at the first race in Bahrain. Tsunoda, as you probably were aware if you watched the race, was really angry about being ordered out of Ricciardo's way in Bahrain, only to be allowed back past again when the Australian could not pass Kevin Magnussen, leading to the young driver to skies by him on the cool-down lap and drive close to him as a show of frustration and, let's be fair, immaturity. But Daniel Ricciardo plays down that Tsunoda thing by saying no one's going to benefit. Both RB drivers had made their intentions clear of challenging Perez for that possible driver, Red Bull. So establishing a lead in the sisters' in-house battle could prove pivotal this year. But when asked about that moment in Bahrain and that rivalry with Tsunoda and how it might play in the year ahead, he explained that there would be no winners from it, especially as both drivers were able to hash out their problems in the team's debrief after Bahrain. Sorry, he said, "Where I'm at in my career and probably just my age, no one's going to benefit from us having a rivalry or attention or anything like this from race one of a long season." He said, especially when the team has new personnel, everyone trying to pick each other up and build themselves and the confidence, we need to help them do that as well. What happened at the end of the race wasn't great, but 2 hours later, we walked out of a meeting and actually put the team in a better place than it was. Congratulations. Let's be fair though, in terms of that RB battle, I think at most only one of them, I believe, is going to survive. But the issue is going to be if one of them I think, needs to dominate the other one in order for Red Bull to raise that eyebrow and think we need to look at one of these two RB drivers. At the moment, I wouldn't say Tsunoda's dominating Danny Ricciardo, but he is doing a much better job. Ricciardo needs to step it up ASAP very, very soon, because at the moment, a lot of people are saying out of the 3 drivers, Tanoda, Ricciardo and Perez, it's the Mexican Sergio Perez that's looking like the favourite for that Red Bull seat, with no one really gave him a chance going into the season. I thought he was still lucky to keep the seat, simply because, on his drives towards the end of the year, simply because if the grid had closed up this year, he needed to get closer to Max Verstappen, because that could be the difference between finishing second and 7th or 8th. Luckily for him, though, that Red Bull car is really good, but he hasn't done a mistake. Having said that, this time last year he was still doing a solid job, potentially challenging even for that World Championship. He did look like, I think for 1 or 2 races, almost a genuine contender. So the FIA boss has been cleared, apparently. Yes. The FIA President investigation verdict has been delivered. This is on Racing News 365. So allegations made against the FIA President, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, is all finished. There we go. The FIA President, he's been cleared after an independent investigation found no evidence of interference in what was 2 separate incidents last year. Recent allegations claim that Ben Sulayem had attempted to interfere with the result of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last year by reversing a penalty that was issued to Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Alonso was issued a 10-second penalty for serving an in-race penalty incorrectly before the decision was later changed, reinstating the Spaniard to the podium. So, another allegation then was also made against the FIA President, stating that he attempted to obstruct the track certification for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which held its first race around the circuit last year. The FIA Compliance, God, that sounds so 1984 George Orwell, the FIA Compliance Department, which was supported by external advisors, conducted an investigation into the claims. So the FIA marked its own homework again. That's the problem, isn't it? Even though I'm sure it was, I'd like to think it was an absolutely fair investigation, but then they're investigating themselves on what could have been potentially quite a serious issue. Do what Red Bull do and get an outside investigation. Be a bit more transparent, once again, which the FIA have not been, just like Red Bull in this case. And now that's why people are saying the FIA marking their own homework. Oh, right, we do not believe it. I'm not saying they deserve it, but can they be surprised? A statement from the FIA stated that the Ethics Committee were unanimous in their determination that there was no evidence to substantiate allegations of interference of any kind involving the President. Okay, fair enough. Your communication, you just need to do better, FIA, in terms of communicating that. And in terms of doing better, yes, more FIA news. Susie Wolff has filed a complaint against the FIA. And this because a criminal complaint against the FIA over allegations made against her at the end of last year. So the F1 Academy managing director, who is also the wife of Mercedes boss Toto Wolff, they found herself at the centre of a media storm in December after the FIA announced it was looking into a potential conflict of interest between them. They announced it, remember. So this followed a media report suggesting that confidential information had been shared between the pair and that teams had complained to the FIA. Both these counts were subsequently strongly denied, or whoops a daisy, and the matter emerged in public after the FIA issued a statement saying the FIA is aware of media speculation centred on the allegation of information of a confidential nature being passed on to an F1 team principal from a member of FOM personnel. The FIA Compliance Department is looking into the matter. While the Wolffs were not named in the statement, it was obvious who the governing body was referring to, and their identity was also briefed to the media. But in the wake of what was, let's be fair, one of the first of many stories in the off-season, a huge backlash over the matter, which included all 9 of Mercedes' rivals stating they had not complained. Just 48 hours after its initial statement, it said the matter was closed and there was no case to answer, and that things did not even warrant a formal investigation. The climb down, though, was not enough for Susie Wolff in particular, who felt that there had been a huge reputational damage done by the FIA in electing to go public, stating that it was assessing the matter. Now, writing on social media at the time, she said, and we quote here from motorsport.com, "I might have been collateral damage in an unsuccessful attack on somebody else or the target of a failed attempt to discredit me personally. But I have worked too hard to have my reputation called into question by an unfounded press release." Now, there's also been intrigues about the intrigue about the source of the original media report triggered the FIA action in the first place and whether it had come from within the governing body itself. Now, with no public apology from the FIA over its handling of what took place, Susie Wolff has taken the steps in going to the French courts in a bid to get the bottom of the aspersions that were cast. Now, in a social media post ahead of the Australian Grand Prix, she said, "I can confirm that I have personally filed a criminal complaint in the French courts on the 4th of March in relation to the statements made about me by the FIA last December. There has still not been any transparency or accountability, again, in relation to the conduct of the FIA and its personnel in the matter. I feel more than ever it is important to stand up, call out improper behaviour and make sure people are held to account." Whilst some may think silence absolves them of responsibility, it does not. Now, fresh intrigue into the FIA's handling of December's events were thrown up earlier this week, and the governing body announced that in such circumstances, it was policy to keep the matters behind closed doors. Amid the FIA Ethics Committee and Compliance Officer looking into a spate of recent complaints, including a couple surrounding President Mohammed bin Sulayem, which we just spoke to you about, had been cleared, it was stated that it was not policy to reveal details in public. In relation to recent events, it said at the FIA inquiries and complaints are received and managed by the Compliance Officer and the Ethics Committee where appropriate. They said both bodies operate autonomously, guaranteeing strict confidentiality throughout the process. As a consequence, we are unable to confirm the receipt of any specific complaint, and it's unlikely that we will be able to provide further comment on the complaints that we may receive from parties. This stance will prompt fresh questions about the approach it took with handling the Wolff matter, because as we know, they don't want to comment on it, but they happily named Wolff, but they haven't allegedly named Wolff, but they haven't named anything about this Horner. Back in February, there's been a complaint, potentially 2, maybe more, in relation to Christian Horner. The FIA, you just need to go back to Abu Dhabi 21, the way that whole thing was handled with Michael Massey. Well, whatever side you're on, the FIA at the moment is not fit for purpose in terms of it cannot communicate very well. It can't communicate with its partners. It cannot communicate with the Formula One fans. And if it wasn't for the F1 fans, I would make a really strong argument there would be no FIA, because the FIA gets most of its money from Formula One. Should Formula One get rid of the FIA? I think that is a question. I don't think they will, but that's certainly a question that they need to ask themselves. Look at the FIA at the moment. They have been an absolute joke. And in terms of putting anyone into disrepute, the way they handle themselves, they're putting themselves into disrepute running a sport. And one of the biggest sports in the world. So they do need to take a good look at themselves, don't they? But anyway, if you made it to the end, subscribe. That'll be fantastic. That'll keep me really, really happy. And stay tuned to the Hot Lap for more F1 news going into the Australian Grand Prix. Thank you very much.